I guess the point I was trying to make is that my strategy of let's be reasonable, let's be understanding, let's have calm conversations where we explain it. I mean, I'm the guy who was on Rogan's show, I don't even know how many times, 4, 5, 6. That didn't work. My strategy didn't work. I think the thing that frustrates me is there's a lot of narrative humpers out there, man. And the narrative humpers, like, it's really cool online to just like hate on liberals and hate on Democrats while giving Trump like a complete and utter pass and talking about none of the failures of the Republican Party. And so that triggers my autism. And what I see online in alternative media is a hellscape of narrative humpers who just want to be cool. So they do the whole like, oh, bro, liberals and Democrats are so cringe. Aren't they so cringe? Look, aren't they so cringe? And it's like, I got it. I heard this for like 10 years straight. I got it. You guys, it's so low energy. It's so dull. It's what Rogan does all the time. It's what all these alternative media podcasts do all the time.
Yeah, well, 100%, bro. Waxing right there. You know, Gavin and I, we like to consider ourselves like media critics of the online indie media, right? To put a really charitable umbrella over what we do for a living. But one of the things that I've noticed is that while there are people that I think are just bad faith, they are just, you know, looking for the money. They're looking for fame. It's the same thing that would take you from, you know, Jimmy Dore spitting on Alex Jones to basically regurgitating all of his talking points, right? You know, you have to be at some point, Dave Rubin, right? The guy was just looking for an angle, right? He was just looking for a way to get the spotlight on him and make some cash. Other people, I think they genuinely are up for the convincing, right? And depending on how strong of a message the left is making, they are going to be swayed in one direction or the other. I'm chiefly thinking of like the average Joe Rogan kind of a guy, right? To just put a pin on it. When it was 2016, 2020 even, right? You went on there multiple times and Joe Rogan seemed very sympathetic to Bernie Sanders. He seemed like he really liked the guy. He endorsed him. There was the whole like fumbling the ball when Bernie, you know, kind of didn't really, you know, lean into the endorsement. And then I think he rejected it at some point. Anyway, he was very interested in all of that. And now you see such a 180, right? He's, you know, talking, making all kinds of fear-mongering hysterics about Tim Walz. He's talking about how Kamala Harris is going to be the end of free speech forever. The First Amendment is going to be over. Very different kind of fear-mongering. And I think it all comes down to the left's ability to message at scale, right? The left's ability to say, hey, here's what we're really trying to fight for, right? And having good answers, you know, to people's legitimate questions, right? My question for you is, what's your message to them for why they should get on board with Tim Walz and Kamala Harris? And also, what's your message to lefties on how they can, you know, better swing people over?
I mean, I probably would have given a different answer in the past, but at this point, I'm just list the facts, list the truth. Because, you know, it's not like my sentiment is just simply I'm pro Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I think at this point, any reasonable person is anti-Trump. Like, I think that's the bottom line, is that we're at a point where the stuff he stands for, the stuff he represents, no reasonable, good faith person can support it. Guys, this is not 2016. It's not 2016 anymore. I was the one in 2016 who was very clear that, like, look, he's using a lot of rhetoric that's going to attract a lot of independents and moderates and former Obama voters. And it did, because he was doing the populist tap dance. He was pretending like he was anti-corruption. He was pretending like he was anti-war. So in 2016, I was very sympathetic to a lot of the Trump voters, because I could see how somebody who otherwise means well can end up there. We are so far past 2016. We're talking about 2024 Trump. We're talking about the guy who's like bragging about how authoritarian he is, and he's going to pack his administration with loyalists. And that guy can do a lot of damage. Like, I know it's supposed to be like cringe liberal stuff to talk about January 6th and the fraudulent elector slate, but like, he showed you he wanted to steal the election. And the only reason we got lucky and the election wasn't stolen is because Mike Pence found like this single shred of humanity and decency that he had and decided to say no to Trump. It was like the one time he stood up to Trump. That guy is dangerous.
Tried to have a man.
He exactly. And he should be nowhere near power. That guy should be nowhere near power. So I think the thing that frustrates me is there's a lot of narrative humpers out there, man. And the narrative humpers, like, it's really cool online to just like hate on liberals and hate on Democrats while giving Trump like a complete and utter pass and talking about none of the failures of the Republican Party. And so that triggers my autism, where I'm like, well, hold on now. You guys need to hear the other side of the story, which nobody's discussing. Nobody's talking about it. People don't know how extreme these people are. For example, 48 Republicans voted against the Right to IVF Act as they pretend. Trump's out there pretending like, oh yeah, no, we're totally pro-IVF. Really? Why did 48 Republicans in the Senate vote against the Right to IVF Act? Why are you guys now talking about banning no-fault divorce? Why did 36 Republican senators vote against gay marriage last year? And 169 Republicans in the House voted against gay marriage. This isn't supposed to be debatable anymore. This is something we put to rest a while ago, and they're insisting on bringing it back up. 44 Republicans voted against extending the child tax credit. This is repulsive stuff, man. 51% of the Republican candidates who ran in 2022 were election deniers. Like, this is not supposed to be in the realm of that which is okay, that which is reasonable. When you talk about Project 2025, which, yes, Trump is going to do a lot of the stuff from there. The Heritage Foundation stacked his administration last time. They'll stack it again. He gave a speech there saying, you guys are going to lay the ideological framework for my next administration. They ban states from doing free school breakfast and free school lunch for kids. That's what Tim Walz did in Minnesota, one of the most base things any Democratic politician has done in the country. They want to ban even blue states from having the opportunity to maybe do that. They want to ban porn. They want to cut overtime pay. They want to roll back child labor laws. They want Trump to have the unitary executive theory, which is no checks and balances. They want to destroy the EPA and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So my job is to give people the facts, give people the information. And what I see online in alternative media is a hellscape of narrative humpers who just want to be cool. So they do the whole like, oh, bro, liberals and Democrats are so cringe. Aren't they so cringe? Look, aren't they so cringe? And it's like, I got it. I heard this shit for like 10 years straight. I got it. You guys, it's so low energy. Cool. It's so dull. It's what Rogan does all the time. It's what all these alternative media podcasts do all the time. And none of them know or care about all the policies I just listed for you, which show that Republicans are a genuine authoritarian threat. So if anything, I'm just anti-Trump based on the facts because people don't talk about those facts. They don't know those facts. They just think, oh, since mainstream media doesn't like Trump, therefore Trump must be cool because I hate mainstream media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I totally agree with what you said about it. It's more complicated than just being for Kamala Harris. Obviously, Zach and I are not fans of what Kamala Harris stands for politically, but I do think that your analysis is 100% correct. Like you said, to anyone who's a serious person, yeah, obviously Trump would be worse. The country cannot survive another 4 years of Trump, most likely because of the reasons you outlined with the anti-democratic fake elector scheme. Also, the Supreme Court. I mean, this is serious stuff. We have to think about it. It's going to have effects that we'll feel for the rest of our lifetime if he gets back in the White House. Not to say that we won't feel the negative effects of a Kamala administration. I'm sure there will be many, but I still think there's at least something for the left to work with in regard to a Kamala administration. The Tim Walz pick obviously gives me a lot of optimism. It's something that we've celebrated here on the Vanguard as at least something to be excited about. You know, he'll be next in line. He'll be a heartbeat away from the White House and stuff like that. And, you know, when we talk about someone like Joe Rogan, I agree that it's important to stick to the facts, but I also think that when it comes to someone like a Joe Rogan, you know, or even like a Anna Kasparian, who Zach brought up, who were people, you know, people that were on board with Bernie in previous runs, but have kind of, you know, undergone a bit of a strategic reconsideration, to put it charitably. I think that it's an interesting conversation and a necessary conversation to have, because there does need to be a strategic reconsideration. Obviously, the left can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. If we're going to move on and evolve, we do have to move beyond and progress the Bernie Sanders 2016 and 2020 strategy. We're going to have to figure out new ways to brand the movement, new ways to expand the movement, new ways to recruit people into the left. And yeah, like, I agree that it's important to emphasize the facts, but I still don't think that's enough when it comes to reaching one of these influencers, but not just influencers, their followers as well. Because sure, for Rogan, maybe it's just about his bottom line. Maybe he's just rich now. He's insulated. He's in Austin. He doesn't want to pay any taxes. Republicans are better for him as far as his bottom line goes. Maybe it's that simple. But I do think a lot of his audience is up for grabs. I think a lot of people in his audience could really be persuaded with some of the sort of libertarian left-wing talking points that a guy like Tim Walz leans into, talking about freedom, talking about providing that kind of contrast to the patriotism that Republicans have talked about and claimed for my entire life. So do you think there's something we could work with there, even under the horrific, genocidal, neoliberal Kamala Harris administration?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, I guess the point I was trying to make is that my strategy of let's be reasonable, let's be understanding, let's have calm conversations where we explain it. I mean, I'm the guy who was on Rogan's show, I don't even know how many times, 4, 5, 6. that didn't work. My strategy didn't work. Being like the good, nice lefty who will explain all these things calmly and give information. It's not like, I go out of there and all of a sudden, oh, look at that. Everybody now agrees with that play. It didn't work. So I guess where I'm at now is more, I'm just going to tell you what it is. And then if you don't accept it, fine. But I'm not going to stop. I'm going to be aggressive in laying out all the things that I know are true. And I'm no longer going to hold your hand and walk through it nice and calmly and let me go down to your level and explain to you like you're a toddler why authoritarianism is bad, right? I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to, but to your point, I do agree with what you said about Tim Walz, which is, yeah, you do see this. Democrats are doing this more often now. It's like they've taken the mantle of, whoa, hold on now. Let's explain this in simple terms that we believe in freedom. They do not believe in freedom. Very clearly, they do not believe in freedom. And here's the list of reasons why that is. I do think that when you can boil things down to their most simple concepts, you have the ability to convince more people. But I would also say you have to be aggressive in doing that as well, right? You can't go in with like the sympathetic tone. It's got to be like, this is what it is. And if you don't agree, whatever. But this is what the it is, right? And with Tim Walz in particular, you guys know this. It's a lot easier to make the case for somebody like Tim Walz. Look, back when it was Hillary, like in 2016, I do think she was a lesser evil, but there was actually an argument that maybe she wasn't the lesser evil, right? Or maybe it was exactly 50-50. We're not there anymore. We're not there anymore. There is no question as to who's the greater evil between Trump and Kamala Harris. And when you pick somebody like Tim Walz, let's say Kamala Harris wins for argument's sake, well, now you set it up so that he's the heir apparent to the Democratic throne. The next time there's an open Democratic primary, he would be a favorite going in because he was the former VP. Like Joe Biden, the only reason he eventually got the White House is because, hey, that's the guy who was Barack Obama's vice president. So normie Democratic voters were very, very comfortable with him. And I think the same thing could happen with Tim Walz. And when you look at somebody like Tim Walz, I mean, do I really need to go through the list? Universal free school breakfast for kids, universal free school lunch, legal weed, carbon-free electricity by 2040, tax rebates for the working class, red flag laws for guns, 12 weeks paid family leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave, free college for the working class. Like the list goes on and on. And even on something like foreign policy, where it is correct to say that's the worst area for Democrats, for Kamala Harris, for Tim Walz. But if you look at Tim Walz's record on that stuff, he opposed the Iraq War. He fought the neocons twice when they tried to bomb Syria. He opposed sending weapons to Saudi Arabia when they were committing a genocide in Yemen. He was one of the only Democratic politicians to defend the uncommitted movement when no other Democrat was doing it. So to lay the groundwork to maybe get a Walz campaign and eventually administration, that alone is a massive, massive W. And what people need to do is get out of their minds this notion that there's even a question anymore. We're not in 2016. I know people like to live in the past. I know they can't get over previous scars or whatever. This is not 2016. It's just not. Like the political realities have shifted massively. And now you have a situation where I always used to say this about Hillary versus Trump. It's like on a test, it might be Trump gets an 8% and Hillary gets like a 26% or something, right? It's not that anymore. It's not that. We're eons and eons. They're not even taking the same test anymore, right? It's totally different.